but some of the things you feel, some of the aspects of this that your viewpoint has changed on.
Yeah.
That was a weird way to formulate that sentence, but I think you know what I mean. Like, which parts of this are you like, nah, and which parts are you still like, yeah?
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's so generous of you to take time and energy to read it and to respond so well. And I didn't even think about the more personal aspects of it too, being like this, like, learning for you, you know, because it's like, oh, it's your friend, you know, all these things
like
about
the
me.
story about the trampoline.
Yeah.
I don't think I had ever heard that story, and I was like, whoa. I was like, damn, I knew you were super smart, but like at 5 years old to be like, I'm having this like transcendent spiritual experience. I don't know. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit too. Sorry, I'm throwing all kinds of questions at you.
No, it's great. So I guess for the elevator pitch, so a little bit of background on the actual thesis. So for listeners, I, in my undergrad, I designed my own undergraduate degree. The school that I went to had what they call interdisciplinary inquiry, which means essentially there's all of these different areas that I believe intersect in this really specific way, but there's not a major that's been created to study those things. And that was like, yes, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to study. That's like, I'm not going to pay money. Well, and I guess like through scholarship and stuff, it's like, well, I'm not really paying money, but it's like, I don't want to waste time studying things that I don't need to, that aren't contributing to my overall goal. And so my undergrad is a bachelor's of science in the human experience. And
so
I
cool.
combined writing, philosophy, sociology, psychology, and performance. So there's like some communication in there as well, and ended up taking like acting classes as well as like communication classes and script analysis, and then of course like Shakespeare and Chaucer and like a lot of English and writing, and then a bunch of philosophy too, right? That philosophy really was the bulk of a lot of what I wanted to study to try and have a really good foundation. And then the reason why I decided to stay for a master's, I was going to be able to graduate in 3 years, but the school I went to had an accelerated master's program where you can combine your senior year with the first year of a master's and then just stay one extra year to get that master's. And I was like, well, if I'm going to be able to graduate early and I can get my master's in 4 years, probably should do that. Like, that sounds pretty good. And English was what I chose to pursue because there were a few people in the English department that I had taken classes from in my undergrad that knew about the project and were like, oh, yeah, for like being able to communicate these thoughts and ideas, studying English and literature is actually going to be really useful. And through this, we can kind of jerry-rig it to be philosophical too. So like, don't worry about it being an English master's. You can still like get the degree and work on what you want to work on. And I was like, okay, let's do this. And so to graduate with a master's, you have to do a thesis. And my main thesis advisor, Alex Lemon, he's a wonderful, wonderful poet. Highly recommend anyone who loves poetry or creative nonfiction, go look up Alex Lemon. He has a book called Feverland, I believe is his most popular published work, but he has so many things that are just like so beautiful, and his life is deeply interesting. But we worked really closely, and through his writing being deeply personal, that was when I kind of came to this my main struggle with this was, okay, how were you able to create something that's so poetic, so philosophical, but so personal at the same time? And he was like, for me, the personal stuff has always been philosophical, and you can't really remove poetry from the personal experience. That's just kind of how it evolved for me. And I was like, can you teach me how to do that in my writing? And so we came to this kind of, I really just tried to study from him this way of creating things that inherently are interdisciplinary. And I wanted it to be deeply personal too, because I think so many of my insights do come from my personal life, and so many of people's personal insights come from their personal life too. So the actual thesis is, I call, a research-based self-help memoir.
Oh.
Which is wild and weird.
Research-based self-help memoir.
And that's
I like the idea of a self-help memoir. Like, I think that's, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's some poetry interspersed in there and some creative nonfiction, as well as some more like structured philosophical and literary analysis too. And the ultimate goal was to create this braided structure of like the personal, the public, and the analytical, to discuss the main point, the first question I pose: if all of life is pointing to one thing, what is that thing? And I can't help but to get deeply personal when I answer that question. And I think part of it was trying to both share what I thought about it at that point in time, but also encourage other people to answer that question for themselves. Because that's ultimately the goal of, I think, all of my work, is to say, you answering this question is the most important thing. Like, you must be asking that question, and you must be attempting to answer, knowing that we can't answer it, but moving towards living in the tension of that and being curious and open. How do you answer that question in a artful, poetic, philosophical, incomplete, creative, expansive way? And so that really was the main thrust then. And I would say that's the main thing that is still consistent with my views today, is the necessity. I don't know why I said it like that. But the necessity of asking that question, and of believing that other people should be asking it too, and really, really, really trying to push that, like, in the idea that everything is propaganda, right? Like, we can't separate marketing and trying to convince someone of your beliefs from anything, because people are always trying to convince you of something, even if they're not aware of it, you know. But that's kind of the propaganda I'm selling, is that your life means something and you need to be investigating that.
Yeah. I think that's the best. If you're going to sell propaganda, I think that's the best propaganda you can possibly sell. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and also, I wanted to throw in, I've never read your poetry before. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. Like this first one, like Living Wake, right after the introduction, I was like, oh my gosh. Like, you know, it was so good.
Thank you.
It just, I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it. I would love to read more of your poetry, is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. That's
your
really
poem
kind.
was so good that now my eye is twitching.
Well, I'm sorry, because I know that's an annoying thing to feel. But thank you. That really means so much, especially knowing like you're a poet too. And yeah, poetry is inherently so personal. So
oh, absolutely. And I think opening a project like this with a poem makes so much sense, because there's sort of this feeling that I get when I read a poem that does its job, where the mystery kind of comes to the foreground. It brings to bear the mystery, you know. Like, it points to it in a way that's like, here's the thing that we're pointing at, and also I'd like to emphasize the fact that it's concealed.
Right.
Like,
right.
I'm unconcealing the fact that it's concealed. It's kind of clouded over, and like, so I started reading the paper with that kind of feeling, you know.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like also starting with knowing that like it is going to be concealed and that it's just kind of like pointing at all of these things. I think that's why both incorporating the poetry felt necessary to try and like awaken something in the reader, not just like I didn't want it to feel like you were reading something. I wanted it to feel like you were experiencing something, which I guess reading something is experiencing something. And so it felt necessary to include poetry throughout, but also to start with it to kind of nod to that it's like, hey, yeah, it's a thesis, but like, it's not your mother's thesis.
This isn't your everyday run-of-the-mill.
Not to like pat myself on the back or anything, but it's different. It's weird too,
it is.
Right?
It certainly is.
It's odd. And then also including like epigraphs was something that I think is really helpful for that as well, that I really love because like in academic work, I really agree with this idea of like standing on the shoulders of giants. That's like, you have to not only pay homage, but also include the work that you are drawing from. And I think that it's also helpful to be like, I'm not trying, even though it is deeply personal, I'm also not trying to just use my words. I'm trying to encourage you to use your words. And how can I example engaging with words in a way that makes someone else want to use their words, right?
Yes. I think that's something that you and me, I guess like a similarity in our life paths, where it's not that we're trying to sell a certain life or meaning or truth, you know, but rather selling the idea that it's sort of the responsibility of every individual to find that for themselves. They could choose not to. That's also a choice that they as a free agent could choose.
Yeah.
But that's kind of in my opinion, it's the path to the most fulfilling sort of life, to be aware of this radical freedom that we each have, at least phenomenally speaking. As a nod back to our determinism episode a couple weeks back. But I forgot where that sentence was going.
No, it's beautiful. I would love to know, I guess, just like your initial thoughts and questions and anything that you wanted to talk about in relationship to this, because I feel like I could sit and talk about, I wrote a whole thesis on it. I'd love to know what specifically for you was interesting, and I think that'll probably reveal the things that I have changed since then in the midst of that conversation. But yeah.
The first question that I had coming up in reading this, I guess kind of just to go through my notes, I would love to get more information about certain stylistic choices you made, specifically I think you capitalized truth, lowercase being, and then I think later you italicized it. And that feels very intentional. And I'm curious why, especially with truth, why capitalize truth?
Yeah, I think one, I will say with the lowercase being, just real quick to get it out of the way, I don't think that I
Why did you spell it with a Y?
That was something that, like, I think has definitely changed in the way that I write, that, like, that really wasn't an intentional choice. It was just kind of, like, talking about it, and something I would definitely change moving forward is, like, okay, well, what kind of being are you really talking about here? Are you talking about a human being? Are you talking about being or a being with a Y? All the different things. With truth, I don't know how careful I was in the finished product of this, but I do try and capitalize truth when I'm talking about the thing that everything is pointing to. Okay. Like, if all of life is pointing to one thing, what is that thing? And where I'm at right now, and I think that this has kind of been a connecting thread for me, even back to 5 years ago when I was writing this, is truth. And the reason why I feel convinced in saying that all of life is pointing to truth is because truth isn't a thing in and of itself. It only exists in relationship to something. Like, something is true or it's false.
Yeah.
And what is ultimately just true is like existence, experience, some type of being, expansion. It's like, it feels like if you were to have a platonic ideal of truth, to me, you would still need to like experience to know what that is. Like, how do you ground that concept into reality? And that's the kind of truth that I'm trying to talk about. That it's like, it feels comfortable to say this thing that is elusive in and of itself is the thing that we're pointing to. But also, you can talk about truth in that there are things that are true and not true just in our like colloquial understanding of life and living and being that that truth for me is like lowercase t, that it's like, okay, if something is like, it's true in a lowercase t way that we are having a conversation right now. That's true.
Okay, interesting.
Is that capital T truth? I don't think so. I think capital T truth would be like, like the whole point of
The mystery?
The mystery, yeah. And so I think it's helpful to have something that is like, oh, it is truth. And even the idea of like something ringing true, like resonance that you feel with something when it rings true, that is part of this, like, what are we pointing at? And so I try and be intentional with the capitalization there to point at, okay, if I want to say something is true in the sense that, like, it's true that this writer said this thing, but that's different than this, like, ultimate and fundamental, like, primordial truth. That is what I'm trying to explore here. And I think what we try and explore on the podcast, right? And then with italicizing it feels similar to truth to me, where it's like, it can be pointing at something that, like, oh, it is just a thing. Like, my phone is an it. I can say it is sitting on the chair, and it just is, and that's not a big deal, right? When we're talking about if all of life is pointing to one thing, what is that thing? It's like, what is it? That feels like it holds a little bit more heft. And what is that it that we are pointing to? And I think that that's necessary for like the mystery not having a name, right? We've talked a little bit about the elusivity of like godliness and how Yahweh is supposed to be this like ineffable name, but then even then we've come up with a way to like say Yahweh, which is just like in and of itself, like, isn't that kind of problematic? And so I think that's why I tend to have like an interchanging language to talk about this thing with truth, with it, with because it's always the thing.
Of like trying to hit a moving target in a sense.
Yeah.
So I think using multiple terms for it, I like that. And I do agree that, like, I like how you described truth as like always relational, and I mean, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of symbolic logic, but I think even in a logical sense, the idea that a statement's truth value cannot be assigned just like that statement in a vacuum, you know?
Right.
Like, that too is always relational. And I think both, I guess what you could call like the more mundane and I don't want to say divine, but like the more mysterious.
Yeah.